Manoj is here, Malhar.
Yep.
Malhar, I think
May I start?
changing the host. When I'm changing the host, the meeting minutes get started. So if it's okay with you, is it okay if I remain the host?
No problem. No problem. It's okay.
Sure.
Okay. I believe all the teams are here now. So we'll proceed. I'm sorry, sir, because we had to do a log off and log in again. So next we have East Asia. The speaker is Deval Kulkarni.
Okay. Good morning to all, our judge, Mr. Saurabh Navande, and my audience. In the current scenarios and taking in 21st century, war and strategic structures are not only limited to defense analysis and planning, but far more outlook to reach towards an economic and social economic corridor with a political sense of matter. Alliances and bonds are not simple. To recalculate the references, geopolitical issues, internal political and respective political backgrounds, and ideological mindsets to another are the most accountable things. In respect to the core issues and economic stability, the both counterparts and strategic planning of choosing an ally is an important factor to recognize and investigation in keeping in mind of a materialistic current situation. On the balance of previous balanced technical needs, an important analysis of economical corridor to gain upper hand in such situation. Hence, keeping in mind, East Asian countries comprise the most promising backgrounds and the futuristic visions that we need for economic and socio-economic growth. May it be the reference of GDP ratio or the military power, the East Asian countries are in a collective sense far further to east. If you take the data of top 5 countries in reference to the FDI investments other than India and China, top 5 countries are from East Asia. Similarly, if you take the same data for the economic growth rate and the geo-economic growth rate, top 5 countries are East Asians, whereas the West Asian countries and neighboring countries don't rely not even in the top 10. FDI investments are the foreign direct investments coming from nations indirectly compromising the production houses, investment ratios, employment, and technically sound nations of give them a head far superior below to these East Asian countries, even from the West countries and the neighboring countries of India. Keeping the economical background aside, a geopolitical understanding in this matter and the current region of Asia is very important. The most important section as a geopolitical stature is the Strait of Malacca and the South China Sea. You can't exclude the East China Sea with the Senkaku Island also. A South China Sea and the Strait of Malacca is the most strategic point of view, where Strait of Malacca is the 890 kilometers smallest stretch of sea connecting the Indian Ocean to the Pacific as well as the South China Sea, from where the naval corresponding and the busiest naval route in the world is extracted to. Surrounding countries will have a geopolitical standoff and a very important role while creating and bolstering ties with such nations. And hence, with the economic bandwidth of countries to keep in bond form for higher functionality, East Asian countries are the best for
Deval, your time is up.
strategic
Please
planning and
conclude.
economic planning. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deval. So next we have from West Asia, Manoj Hansate. Manoj, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good morning, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd be dealing with how India should counter China in cooperation with West Asia. We all know that China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative acts as a gateway to Central Asia, Europe, and Africa via West Asia. So countering BRI is India's one of the biggest challenge. In past, India has watched China increase its presence in West Asia via Indian Ocean. But now India's strategic investments have made some difference. India has attempted to bolster its strategic foothold in Middle East. In 2014, Prime Minister announced the project MOSAM, which is Maritime Routes and Cultural Landscape, It is inspired by India's historical role as the focal point of trade in Indian Ocean. Project Mosam would also allow India to re-establish trade with Indian Ocean world, which stretches from East Africa along the Arabian Peninsula, southern Iran to South Asia. In 2018, India signed a naval access agreement with Oman to use Dukam port. This port will act as India's entry point for wider Asia and East Africa. It is merely 40-minute flight distance from Mumbai. Oman has also given rights to Indian Navy vessels for anti-piracy operations in Gulf of Aden. Uh, Next is India has also proposed a SAGE pipeline, which hopes to develop jointly with Oman and Iran. It will transfer 8 trillion cubic feet of natural gas over the next 20 years from the Gulf region to Indian in Gujarat using deep sea routes in pipelines. Uh, it will it will approximately be 1,300-kilometer long pipeline to bolster further ties, military ties. Many military exercises also take place between West Asia and West Asian countries and India. For example, Desert Eagle Air Force exercise, Gulf Star naval exercise with UAE, Blue Flag Air Force exercise with Israel, etc. Today, India is a major economy, which is 5 times that of today China is a major economy, which is 5 times that of India. Major reason for its development has been its uh, expansionist policy and its spread out trade system. In future, China aims to surpass its trade superiority with Belt and Road Initiative. So it becomes very necessary to counter China's trade routes with developing India's stronghold in Western Asia, uh, which is the heart of international trade route and China's ambitious maritime Silk Route. So East Asia is a complex region with many countries
Manoj,
having
your time is up. Please conclude.
yes, sir. Here, India as a soft power diplomacy in West Asia region could clearly be advantageous and visible as it is visible from similarities in regional, cultural, and food and skills, etc. Thus, I believe India would pursue to bolster its tie with West Asian countries more aggressively to counter China. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj. So the next speaker we have is from neighboring countries, Sarvesh Navande. Sarvesh, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Ola, I'm sorry, but we had decided the sequence. So Ankit is supposed to be next.
Okay, fine. Ankit, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Morning, everyone. As defined by Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, China makes use of a 3 Cs framework, which is covert, coercive, and corrupt. And using this framework, it has increased its influence in our neighborhood. Thus, it is paramount that we forge strong relations with our neighboring countries to avoid China exploiting their boundaries with us in the future. So, I'd be talking about Afghanistan and Pakistan. So, Afghanistan is at the crossroads of southern, western, and Central Asia, which puts it at a geographically strategic location. Currently, it is unstable fighting the Taliban. The nation holds tremendous potential for trade, and it could open our doors to the Central Asian markets. India and Pakistan are key players in Afghan politics, and Pakistan shares a boundary and primacy, but India shares a goodwill and popularity along the Afghan presidents. India has constructed key infrastructure projects and pledged a $2 billion aid on humanitarian grounds. We also set up schools and gave out 1,000 scholarships annually to Afghan citizens. This use of soft power has earned us approval of the Afghan populace. Also, in the defense sector, India has been training Afghanistan national security personnel, and 107 of its cadets have been trained at IMA Dehradun. We need to provide them with military hardware and air power necessary to fight Taliban in case a fight breaks out. Also, we should help them set up some solid democratic institution with our years of experience, something that other regional powers cannot help them with. Thereafter, we could use the trade, bring prosperity to the nation, and reduce the Pakistani influence on their soil. Speaking of Pakistan, it is a nation that does not respond to reason, and it has violated every agreement we had with them since 1947. Thus, it is an open secret that it has been run by its deep state, and it doesn't want peace with India. Thus, a committee in Pakistan released a 278-page report which exposes a sordid tale of corruption by the Chinese companies and Pakistani higher authorities, and thus this report was never made public for obvious reasons. Every Chinese project on Pakistani soil has a influx of Chinese laborers, whereas Pakistani people, huge amounts of Pakistani people remain unemployed. And this brings on a dissent against Chinese companies and Chinese people in Pakistan. I believe this dissent, along with supporting the Balochistan freedom movement, should be exploited by the Indian intelligence agencies, which would put a pressure on the Pakistani authorities to stop supporting terrorism in Kashmir and on the entire Indian nation. Furthermore, a stable Afghanistan also benefits Pakistan, which has a deteriorating economy and money. The trade will bring in money which will support the desperate economy of Pakistan. Thus, I conclude that we could improve relations on the grounds of trade and mutual interest with our neighbors.
Thank you, Ankit. Next, we have from East Asia, Ritvik Ambekar. Ritvik, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. China, a giant economy, a supreme military power with one of the largest standing armed forces. A country which, when evaluated on a SWOT analysis, would give the greatest number of weaknesses. The lion's share of its weaknesses point out towards the Eastern Asia. When it comes to thinking of an aggressive, result-oriented policy to counter China, undoubtedly, Eastern Asia is the best way to counter China. China is like an auto rickshaw on 3 wheels. Its front wheels account for its trade and its economy, while its back wheels account for its military and political relations. To counter such a superpower, it is important that you burst all 3 tires. In the current scenario, China is at a position where all 3 tires are continuously weakening. China is already engaged at too many fronts and fighting the territorial disputes with many countries in the East. China has island and maritime border disputes with various Eastern Asian countries in the South China Sea and its extension. There is hardly any country with whom China is doing well in the East. Recently, China has been doing a lot of illegal military drills in the South China Sea, which has led to a large number of aggressive reactions from Vietnam, Philippines, Hong Kong, Japan, and the United States. The whole region is agitated by Chinese flexing its power and is definitely looking forward to retaliate. The Artha Shastra, the oldest Sanskrit text, quotes, "The enemy of my enemy is a friend," which is the precise approach we need to apply here. China's whole economy relies on the exports it does. And the best way to block these exports and imports is by blockading the ocean routes, which will lead to economic ruin. China fears the first and the second island chain, which would directly cut the China's tongue or the 9-dash line and stop them from any kind of import and export. With East Asian countries, India has the best scope to bolster ties with countries of similar interest. And also, since most of these countries are in rock solid relationship with India, we must look forward to bolstering ties with the East. It is time where we realize that attack is the best defense and start cornering China with our enhanced relationships with all the East Asian countries to the maximum potential. In military aspects, the East Asia consists of one of the greatest armies. All of them are ranked amongst the world's best armed forces. If all of them come together and decide to pull China down, China will be in deep trouble. The Western Asia has been responsible for large amounts of terrorism spread globally, and these countries in the West are motivated religiously and can never be trustable. And our own neighborhood is sinking in the strategic debt trap by China. Hence, to conclude, I would like to say, when nothing is left, you must go to the right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritvik. Next speaker is from West Asia, Krishna Javanjal. Krishna, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be speaking on why should India bolster ties with the West Asian nations to counter the Chinese threat. I would like to start with the road initiative of the Chinese from the BRI. Road initiative is basically a 21st century maritime Silk Route. This, along with the string of pearl strategy of the Chinese, possesses a great imminent threat to the not only to the Indian subcontinent but also to the strategic naval assets present in the Indian Ocean region, specifically in the Persian Gulf and the Horn of Africa. Now, India has its own sort of iron curtain which extends from east to west Asia to counter the Chinese. But I would like to point out two major ports that India is currently having in the Middle East. That is the Dakkam port in Oman and the Chabahar port in Iran. Speaking from the naval point of view, these two ports have a great importance to the maritime security status India is currently having in the Indian Ocean region by securing the flow of hydrocarbons for the continuous energy needs. Also, this has to do majorly with countering the Chinese in the Middle East. In 2003, India and Iran first agreed on development of trade and cooperation through Central Asian links and channeled them towards the Chabahar port and subsequently in the Indian Ocean region. This not only ensures the India's assets in the maritime region, but also counters China directly in terms of the Belt and Road Initiative, which possesses a great threat to Indian economy in the Middle East. Some strategists say that Belt and Road Initiative is one of the most important projects in the history of humankind ever. So also India and New Delhi and Tehran agreed to cooperate on various issues regarding this countering Chinese agenda. I would like to give an example regarding Afghanistan. Almost 80% of Afghanistan's trade shifted through the Chabahar port, which earlier used to happen through the Pakistan Karachi port after the signing of MOU between New Delhi and Tehran. So you can see the impact that India can have with just one port, that is the Chabahar port, to counter China. I would say this is not something like a quick reaction from China, unlike in the East. But this is a continuous, slow-paced trade war with China in the West Asian region. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. The last speaker for today will be talking on behalf of neighboring countries, and that is Sarvesh Navande. Sarvesh, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mallar. Good morning, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd be speaking on how the neighborhood policy should be pursued by our country. My friends have already covered the neighboring countries and they have mentioned how the relationship with India are. So when we talk about the Chinese threats, what are we talking about? The list is they have kept our northern frontiers unsettled, provided whose only target is India, especially in times like these where India will be facing a two-front war with China and Pakistan. China is occupying territories in areas where they are gaining military advantage. There is a trade deficit in our country, which is because of Chinese imports, lower costs, and export competitiveness. There is deindustrialization in India. It is due to the import and large range of Chinese consumer products. And the final thing is creating anti-India mindsets and sentiments amongst our friendliest neighbors. I'd like to mention that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when elected as the Prime Minister in 2014, he invited all the neighborhood counterparts from Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Bhutan, Pakistan to his swearing-in screening ceremony at Rashtrapati Bhavan. This is where the neighborhood first policy set in motion, shifting the foreign policies directives towards its neighbors, which was highly appreciated then and is still now. So this initiative was for regional connectivity and cultivating cross-border relations. Now focusing on specific countries, I'd be speaking on Bangladesh, Nepal and Bhutan. So Indo and Bangladesh, the border, it is the 5th longest land border in the world. We have been sharing many exchanges and helpful scenes in security and border management. Now China has been utilizing its trade benefits using Bangladesh's ports, and side by side is keeping check on India. India and Bangladesh have been focusing on trade, economic cooperation and technology exchange. Now China is since years trying to lessen Dhaka's dependence on India. and has replaced India as the top trade partner in Bangladesh since 2015. Talking about Nepal, the relations turned sour in 2019 when Indian government completed the NRC in Assam. And again, talking about Nepal, there is the anti-India policy under Chinese pressure. They have altered their Citizenship Act, giving more scope of dominance to Chinese in the mountainous regions, politically and population-wise. The Chinese have been claiming the Himalayan peaks, territories and villages in Nepal as its own. There is the Kalapani territory issue, the latest one. It began when India built a bridge in the disputed areas without having discussions with Nepal counterparts. Again, Mandarin language has been made compulsory in Nepal's schools.
Sir, your time is up. Please conclude.
Right. So I'd like to conclude by saying that at the times when China is influencing India's friendliest neighbors into anti-Indian policies, India must double its efforts to sustain long-term friendship with its closest members.
Thank you, Sarvesh. So that concludes our opening statements. Now the forum is open for discussion. Everyone please maintain civility and let others complete their statements before you have something to say. The floor is now open. Omkar,
I'd like to counter 2 points right now. First of all, defense exercises what West Asia gave right now. I'll need to brief in exact case. Defense exercise in West Asian countries have been limited. 2015, 2016, 2008, 2009. That is Oman, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Israel. Other than that, we have never had defensive exercise with anyone. But with East Asia, every year we have SIMBEX with Singapore, including Japan, including US. US is another counterpart, but still is included in the exercise. Vietnam and Taiwan and Philippines. We have yearly naval and air force exercises with these nations. Countering part to the neighboring countries right now, they said most of the negative points they gave themselves, being China being a big influence in neighboring countries. In 2014 to 2016, India had an aggressive policy of becoming friends with the neighboring countries, and look what they have got right now. Because China has put a financial debt on these countries. Nepal's Kathmandu International Airport is built by China. Bangladesh is in 68% GDP economic debt with China. Similarly, Sri Lanka is on 43% of economic debt with China on GDP growth rate. Same goes with Pakistan and Myanmar. We have aggressively pursued our policies with neighboring countries to bolster ties and help them. Even in Nepal's earthquake prism, Myanmar's Rohingya, Bangladesh's terrorism crisis made with Pakistan. So that's my point. And neighboring countries are way out of line in this case. That's my point.
Okay. So next we will be having Omkar. He was raising his hand. Then we will have Ritvik and then Vedant. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and I'll call out your name. Omkar, you may begin.
Okay, so they will right now talked about that neighboring countries are out of hand for bolstering ties. I would like to tell him that China wants us to China keeps on activating the Himalayan belt constantly, as they want us to avoid our focus from maritime domain. By doing this, we have a major threat from all the sides, and the maritime domain plays an important role here. So India has recently adopted an Indian Ocean strategy with the help of Sri Lanka and Maldives. India has started developing larger radar networks in islands such as Sri Lanka, Maldives, Seychelles, Mauritius, and Bangladesh. This will enhance India's control over Malacca Strait, which is main shipping channel between Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, and which is world's major primary oil checkpoints. China fears this India's domination, also known as Malacca Syndrome. Thank you.
Ritvik, you may begin.
I would like to add on to Deval's point here mentioned. We spoke about Mandarin being used in Nepal, but I would like to add on to that point that Hindi has been recently banned in Nepal in the coming days. Recently, it has been banned in Nepal, and also Hindi channels have been banned, which shows a gesture that they are unwanted to India. Further, coming on to the neighbors, I would like to go with all the neighbors one by one. Coming to Pakistan, we can never expect them to be friendly with us. Coming to Bhutan, after Doklam, they have been worrying. They have been very worrying with the relations with India, and because of the railway projects and all the other projects that have been going on in Bhutan, they have simply lost the friendship they used to have, even though we have signed various treaties with them. Coming to Maldives, we are not even allowed to keep helicopters now in Maldives, and it's been a great debt trap since the government from 2015. Moving on to Bangladesh, we know that we are now not in good connections with the ruling party in Bangladesh. Also, Bangladesh has given one of the islands to China for trade, but as we know, it is simply a part of the string of pearls. Moving on to Iran, also coming to the western parts, Iran has got a lot of oil reserves and has been giving almost 80% of his oil reserves to China. Coming to Sri Lanka, like we know, the Hambantota port is given to China. Also, Sri Lanka is having a great debt trap, which almost accounts for more than half of its GDP. Moving on to Nepal, like I just mentioned, after the Madesi crisis and after KP Oli coming in, I don't think Nepal is going to be a very friendly ally, because with the recent trends that Nepal has been doing, the Kalapani issue and the map marking that they recently did, Nepal is emergency in itself in its own country, and they are looking forward to have an anti-India policy, which is precisely why KP Oli is there. So with that, I would like to come to the last point about Bangladesh. So Bangladesh has already in Bangladesh there has already been a flyover which was constructed by China, which is the 6 kilometers long flyover for railways and roadways. With this, I would like to end, and I would like to say that in no far relations do I think the neighbors would be helpful to us, and they could be helpful, but not on a long run, I would say, because they are economies which are taking a lot of time to improve, and that is all I would like to say as of now. Thank you.
Okay, Rutvik. Now we have Vedant. After Vedant, Sarvesh will speak, and then Daksh.
So first of all, countering Rutvik and Mallar, talking about the exercises which are happening with the Western countries. Yes, there are 4 to 5 exercises which are happening with the countries of the Western countries like Israel, Royal Army of Oman, then we have Qatar, and many more. Now talking about the South China Sea, the South China Sea is already disputed, and in that area, some of the islands are wherein China has placed its military. So rather than making it more aggressively, we should focus on the West Asia part. Secondly, talking about the neighboring countries, the Gwadar port, which is a part of CPEC, that is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Most of the part of that CPEC lies in the Balochistan area, and now the Gwadar port, it starts from most of the oil ships comes from the Strait of Hormuz. Therefore, it is very important for India to take control over the Gwadar port. And yes, India's tie with the Western countries like Iran, it has set up its Shahabar port with its help, accounting rupees $3,000 billion. Now, talking about the Gwadar port, yes, the China is totally influencing it, because by taking Gwadar port, it will totally rule the area of the Arabian Sea, start from the Strait of Hormuz, from the Arabian Sea to Sri Lanka, as Hambantota port is also with the China's access. From that Strait of Hormuz, Strait of Malacca, total area is in the control of China. Therefore, again, now talking about the neighboring countries, to tackle the neighboring countries, in the recent news, there was a news that China has provided a huge boost to the Bangladesh by announcing tariff exception by 97%. After this, all the goods in Bangladesh, like there are around 8,250 goods wherein the tariff has been waived off. So herein we can link that how the China is influencing the neighboring countries like Pakistan, wherein it has provided with full of infrastructure. It may be rail, road, and more. And basically, the fact is that they are building the highway from Balochistan, Gilgit-Baltistan to the one town in China, which will cover the entire area of the Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So neighboring countries is out of the syllabus, but East Asian countries also already disputed. So rather than concentrating on the East, we should focus on the West. Thank you.
Just adding on to that point, even though China's disputes in the South China Sea are known, China is also having disputes on its western front. For example, with countries like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, which it directly borders. When it comes to Kyrgyzstan, China has expressed possibility of deploying combat forces to Kyrgyzstan and has also threatened it with not recognizing its independence. And the same threats are faced by Tajikistan as well. So next speaker is Sarvesh. Sarvesh, you may begin.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Deval and Ritvik for giving such good points, because these are the points I'm going to use to for my next statement. Now, speaking about specifically Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan, Ritvik mentioned Hindi language has been banned and all the Hindi TV serials and all being under pressure when it comes to Xi Jinping. Also, according to Bangladesh, the reasons they gave are the exact reasons why India must bolster its neighbors, must focus more on neighborhood policy. They have given excellent points on when it comes to GDP growth rate, how the top 10 militaries are from the East, how geopolitically they are placed and situated as of now, all the East Asian countries. So they already are on a stand and are on a good position and in good relations with India already. Now they've mentioned points where India is not in good relations with its neighbor. This is why we must. This is exactly why we must focus more on strengthening our ties with the neighboring countries. Our government itself has had the policy of neighborhood policy first. So we must focus on that.
Okay. Daksh, you may begin.
Yeah. So as Malhar said, that China has some issues with the western side, especially Tajikistan. I would like to highlight that China is assisting Tajikistan with its border security. That's the first point. Secondly, China has signed an agreement with Tajikistan National Security Committee to that and China to counter 11 outposts and a training center. Third point I would like to put is there was a secret agreement in 2015 or 16 between China and Tajikistan, which gave a right to Beijing to refurbish 30 to 40 ground posts on Tajikistan side of the country, which shares a border with Afghanistan. And the game changer point which I would like to say is Tajikistan service is claiming that Tajikistan's array of the CCTV cameras will be equipped with AI technology, which then helps to recognize faces, and which was done with the help of the Chinese technology. I don't know how safe is this, but that's the point I would like to say about Tajikistan.
Okay. Krishna, you may begin.
Daksh, I would like to counter you on your same point regarding the Tajikistan issue. As you see, China is again getting one extra country to get it into the China debt trap policy. So hence we should, rather than seeing this as a Chinese, we should see this as a Chinese expansion in the region, and hence India should more aggressively have good relations with these countries. I don't think recently, apparently, India has any such good relations with those countries which China has. Also, I would like to point out Devil's issue regarding the exercises held by East Asia with India. I would say that East Asia, South China Sea already has 2 super carriers of the US. So I don't think there is much need to focus on the East Asian issue as far as the Indian side is concerned. I would rather say India should go for its soft diplomacy in the West Asian region, whereas there is no one to counter China till now. As you can see, US is currently very much complicated in all of the Middle East and stuff. So here only we see as China as the biggest economic powerhouse in the Middle East, Eastern region. And I don't think there is any country better than India which can counter this Chinese expansionist regime in the Middle Eastern region.
Okay, adding on to Krishna's point, Krishna mentioned United States and even India providing aid to Southeast Asian countries to counter China. So some of an example of that help is India has been providing training to Vietnamese for the Kilo class submarines and also Sukhoi aircrafts. Along with that, Vietnam has also expressed an interest to buy BrahMos missiles to counter the Chinese threat. So those are a few exercises that India has been carrying out with Vietnam, and similar exercises are being carried out with other Southeast Asian countries. Next, we will move on to Rutvik. After Rutvik, Manoj will speak, and
Malhar, before Rutvik, can I please join in, because I guess I've raised my hand before Rutvik.
Who is speaking exactly?
Yeah, and this is Deval here.
Deval. Okay.
Can I join in before Rutvik, because my points are...
okay, fine. Rutvik, will you be fine with that?
Sure.
Okay. Deval, you may begin.
Great. Now, I have 5-pointer issue adding on Ritvik's topic also. Many a times, South China Sea as a concept has been broken up here. South China Sea is...
Again, the land. So I'd like to say that since our friends have already mentioned, we share good ties with Eastern countries. Western countries cannot be really we cannot really rely on them. So it is time, especially again, I'd like to point out that considering our topic, it is on what policy we should take considering today's situation. Today, we're facing the COVID-19 pandemic. Pro-COVID, it is the researchers say that tourism sector will lose rupees 5 lakh crore and 5 crore jobs are to be cut. This is just one example of how the COVID-19 will affect our country. So your neighboring countries play a major role because maximum of our tourists are from neighboring countries. So instead of having anti-India policies, which China is trying to mentally influence these countries, it's very necessary we bolster tie with the neighboring countries.
Okay. Malhar, I would like to have a right to reply on this case by East of Asia.
Okay, fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So being the background, I'll try to make it short and crisp. For a geopolitical sense, right now, just one statement: what is better, to make a friend its enemy, or its friends or enemy's enemy our friend? What is better? Because here the debate is going like China has good relation with this, China has good relation with neighboring countries, China has good relation with Western countries. That's why we should go there. But in the current scenario, when we have when we have a problematic situation coming out from the three sides, what will be better? Being friendly with China's enemies to control the economic sense, because China is known to have an economic problem and hence instability inside the Chinese government. Easiest point, I need a factual reply on this. Let's not get haywire. I haven't got a factual reply on the death traps that China is facing in West Asia and all the neighboring countries. 99% of the neighboring countries we have are in the death trap with China, other than Bhutan. Secondly, in West Asia, Yemen, Oman, Saudi, Kuwait, Qatar, plus Jordan are in debt trap with China. How are you going to counter that? The same way as we've countered Maldives, we're giving them extra loans. How many countries are you going to give loans to get a waiver off from them? How are you going to strategically plan to get them in our side? In other sense, East Asian countries are trying to approach us to solve the South Asian point. Hong Kong. India opened up the Hong Kong line in UNSC last month ago. Taiwan. India is helping Taiwan to get in problems with economic and military sense. Vietnam is coming to us for help. Korea, Japan, Philippines, Malaysia have banned China movement since 2019. They are banning Chinese movement, or they're approaching India for FDI inflows and FDI funds. The FDI inflows of these countries is 72% high since 2017, because since 2017, South China Sea problem has frustrating and these countries are approaching us to the help. So whom should we help first and whom should we bolster our ties with us? Please explain that. Secondly, maritime I'm sorry, I don't know the name who mentioned the problem of maritime, as India is not open in the maritime logics in East Asia. But we have an MOU with not Australia, Vietnam, and Taiwan to track the maritime track in with ISRO. You can search the Ministry of External Affairs ISRO, and we have an external MOU and internal MOU with them. So you're wrong and factually wrong at that point. Then South China Sea is weak. Yes, the countries are weak against South China Sea, but because when we get included there, it will be a superior epilotic way that we can gain trust over there. So countering the survey's point, it is not easy and not feasible in this current scenario in the next 4 years also to make our friend their enemy. But for the enemy, we can make enemy's enemy our friend easily. Thank you.
Okay,
Mullar, I
thank
would
you.
like to come in here.
First of all,
I would like to come in here, please.
I would like to.
Okay, we will have Rutvik, then we will have Krishna. He was raising his hand for quite a long time, and then Ankit.
Okay, a quick point here that we are debating here about countering China. Again, I would like to say this, and countries like Nepal, Bhutan, or for that matter, Sri Lanka or Maldives, why would they go against China is my question here. Are we looking forward to make ties with them, or are we looking forward to counter China? Why would these diplomatic and neutral countries go against China? Here we have to find contenders who are really looking forward to pull down China. And in that scenario, I would like to come to the military aspect now. You mentioned that we should enhance our ties with our neighbors, but let me tell you, Sri Lanka is one of the weakest armies in the world, with about 3 lakh people in the armed forces over there. Qatar, coming to the western part, Qatar has only 12,000 people there, and they have a military budget of about only 1 billion. And they have got a lot of expensive cars, but they don't know how to drive. Coming to Bahrain, they have got only 47,000 people in their armed forces with their military budget of $1.4 billion. Coming to Lebanon, which is also in the western part, it has a military of 1,16,000, which is pretty low. Coming to our very good neighbor Nepal, they have an armed forces of 1,57,000, and their military budget is only $300 million, which is very low. And so on, it goes so on. Bhutan with only 15,000 people, and they have only 10 armored vehicles and 4 aircrafts, which are not even combat aircrafts. So I wouldn't personally look for contenders to counter China with these contenders. Whereas coming to the eastern side, I would say that Vietnam is one of the strongest armed forces in the world. It is ranked in the 23rd most powerful countries. It has a power index rating of about 0.3988, and it has got 54 million active troops. Coming to Taiwan, which is also in the east, has got around 18 million troops, has a defense budget of $10 billion. Then it is ranked amongst the 22nd best armed forces in the world. Coming to Indonesia, it has got an armed forces of 8 lakh people. It has a defense budget of $7 billion, and it is ranked 16th in the world. Coming to South Korea, our one of the best allies, has got the armed forces of 58 lakh people, and their defense budget is 38 billion. It has a power index rating of 0.1761, and it is one of the largest standing armed forces in the world. It is ranked 7th in the world. Coming to Japan, it has a defense budget of $47 billion, and it is the
statistics, please.
May I speak? May I speak?
So I would like to state here that statistics was to prove and to show you that making good ties with the eastern countries would give us better results instead of making friends with Bhutan, Nepal, or any of those countries which are in no condition of going or countering China. They would never counter China, first of all. So that doesn't make a point. And if you consider the countries in the West, also they do not have as strong militaries as we have. So as the Eastern countries have. Hence, I would like to conclude here by saying that we must go with the Eastern countries.
Thank you, Rutvik, for telling us the military powers of the different countries. But having military power is not as good. There should be a cooperation between both the countries. Now talking about here, I think Israel out in the Western Asian countries is the second largest defense supplier of India. Also, Secondly, now talking about the ties, which you said that the Qatar have the poor army, this have the poor army. Why are looking for the negative aspects of the Western Asian countries? We have Israel to tackle China. Thank you.
Vedant, I'll just speak a little bit on what Ritvik said right now. Ritvik, you gave all these statistics regarding Vietnam, Philippines, and what not countries East Asia is having. I would like to counter you on the same point. These countries are already militarily stable, and let's say they are booming right now in terms of military, as you spoke. Also, plus US has its own carrier fleet in the South China Sea. So I don't see a point why you seeing this. There are already players who are readily countering China in the eastern South China Sea region. I would also like to counter Deval in his point, which states that regarding the economy India is having the East Asian country. But I would like to mention here that the 65% of proven oil resources and 45% of natural gas are in the Middle East. So ultimately, in the upcoming, let's say 50 or 60 years, we need to look on that side also. And here, China is doing something that is that can hurt, as many of the delegates said, that Middle East is like a chameleon, that it changes, countries change their perspective regarding. So that's why we need an aggressive policy which will not only look after the Chinese expansion in the Middle East, but also develop the ties with countries. For example, in case of any war-like situation, oil and natural resources are the most important thing which a country needs to go to go on in the war-like period. So I think in the maritime status currently, also I would like to counter Devil on the South China Sea. India currently is not is currently going for its 200 strong naval ship navy. So we currently can't deploy our assets in the South China Sea. Rather, what we can do is get a complete dominance over the Indian Ocean region, and thereby securing our assets in the West Asia, which China is pursuing desperately to have gain control in this region.
Okay, thank you,
Okay, a
Krishna.
request to everyone, please raise your hands before speaking. Do not nudge or interrupt in between when another speaker speaks. Okay, over to you, Mallar.
Thank you, Anay. Ankit, you may begin.
So Ritvik made a good point that we have terrible relations with our neighbors and we are losing them. So I'd like to say it's all the more reason to make haste in winning them back. And if they can't be our friends, we have to make sure they are not our enemies. I'd like to bring up the Kalapani issue. So the Kalapani-Lippo Lake tri-junction is just 461 kilometers away from New Delhi. So if also the Chinese military offered to help them deploy Chinese troops in the Lippo Lake region, to which Nepalese declined. But we cannot just guarantee that they will not try again. And if we lose this Lippo Lake, it will bring New Delhi under the range of Chinese bombers. And also countering China, in that region, China doesn't have any population. Like, it is very sparsely populated. But but India is the Indian population is far significant in that region, and the way China orders Nepal, it's like a bully ordering its underdog.
Okay, so now Daksh has been raising his hand for quite a long time. You may begin, and after Daksh, we can have Sarvesh, and then Ritvik. Ritvik or Devil from East Asia. You guys can decide.
So as Manoj said, that one of the weakest nations are in East Asia, but also I like to highlight that East Asia has the most powerful army. Like South Korea is ranked number 7, and Japan is ranked number 5. That was military. Shifting to economic relationships with the East, as you know, India has the most number of engineers. Statistically, it shows India accounts for 25% of the engineers in the world. So even though we have less employment for engineers, Japan comes into the picture, and Japan has a policy called the JEC, which is Japanese endowed courses in engineering colleges, according to which the engineers would be placed in Japanese companies in India. And shifting to the as we know, as we are talking about the Make in India policy or established in India. So the JIM, or the Japan Institute of Manufacturing, which provides us with the Japanese manufacturing skills and the Japanese style of manufacturing. This was about Japan. Talking about our economic relationship with South Korea, PM Modi invited South Korea to have a look at our defense needs and how to partner with us, which builds to a strong relation between India and South Korea, militarily and economically. There was recently an agreement established with the Joint Working Group on shipbuilding with South Korea. So this was, I would like to say about this. And speaking about other countries like Mongolia, military the Khan Quest and the Nomadic Elephant is a military exercise conducted between India and Mongolia, which will mark its 65th anniversary in 2020, which says that our relationship with Mongolia has been really solid since for a good 65 years. And PM Modi, under the Look East policy and Act East policy, was the first Indian PM to visit Mongolia, which shows that we need to bolster our relationship with the East rather than going to the West or neighboring countries.
Okay. Ritvik, would you like to take the...
Yes. Vedant spoke about before I speak about Israel, I would like to come here and say that we have to look for nations who are willing to counter China or having policies to counter China. We won't be looking for countries which are neutral and then we build them. India is a growing country and India cannot invest a lot of money into just building ties, and China comes in, gives them a lot of depth, and then they go under debt trap. So I would like to counter here what Vedant said. Vedant spoke that China, we have in the West, we have Israel to counter China. I would like to put down a few facts here because I wouldn't like to beat under the bush. So Israel is the second largest foreign supplier of arms and ammunition to China. They are trading on solar energy, manufacturing sector, robotics, irrigation, construction. More than 1,000 Israeli firms are operating in China. Also, China has close military strategic links with Israel. Also, Israel is providing China with military assistance. US-China Economic and Security Review Commission states that Israel ranks second only to Russia as a weapon system provider to China as a conduct for sophisticated cutting-edge military technology. They are also collaborating on sectors like aerospace and defense. And Israel has provided China with IAI Lavi UAV technology. Also, Israel was ready to sell one of its most esteemed Falcon airborne early warning radar system, which is banned by China, and it was ready to sell it which is banned by the US, and it was ready to sell this at a very cheap cost. So I would say that Israel here also would play a very neutral role when it comes to war against, when it comes to countering China. So I would just say that here we are looking forward to nations who are really interested in going against China, who are not diplomatic when it comes to countering China. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ritvik. Manoj, would you like to counter that
Malhar,
point?
I guess it was my turn as you announced before this.
We already had you would be the third speaker from East Asia to speak consecutively. We'll have Manoj from West Asia, then someone from neighboring countries, and then I think we would like to end the debate after that. Manoj,
because I didn't get a chance for countering points, and 7 of them are consecutively spoke each other. I guess so. I should have the right to reply when.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
We will have Manoj, then Omkar, and then Deval, and then that would be the end of the debate. All right.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Now talking about. Hello.
Yeah,
Hello?
Manoj.
Countering to Ritwik's point, I would like to say that strategies are built on assessing the long-standing conflict issues. So there are many conflict issues between Israel and China. For example, I would like to point out that Chinese state stance on Israeli settlements in West Bank could also be the source of friction. The government has refused to allow its neighbor to work in West Bank, citing the opposition that Israeli settlements construction there. Again, China has recognized Palestine as the state and offered support for the Palestine. Following the uptake in the trade, India on several occasions in recent years has abandoned the previous pattern of voting towards Arab states against Israel in United Nations system. However, China has not changed in voting pattern, and it aligns against Israel whenever it is to vote in UN bodies. So, I would also like to press how Iranian public today, when while many Iranian merchants and workers complain that import of cheap Chinese goods are costing them the jobs and businesses. Should there be a regime change in Iran, China's whole Gulf strategy would collapse. So here the vacuum of power would come in, where India could take its stance here. So this could also us image as a responsible actor in the world stage. That's all from my side.
Okay, this is very annoying. Next
I
time
guess
we'll
we need to
probably
change some structures next time when we have debating options. Zoom is not a great option.
yeah, we'll probably go for Google Meet or Cisco WebEx.
Google Meet is better. Okay.
I guess it's Vedant's turn to speak, right?
I don't
right?
think Manoj was done with his points.
Okay. I'm sorry for it.
Mallar, may I?
Okay. Listen, you and Omkar can finish it off quick and crisp. Then we will have someone from, I guess, East Asia speak. And
I'm going to conclude with East Asia.
Yeah, they will speak after that, and then we will call it an end because it's already 12:33. So we will invite just last three arguments: Sarvesh, Omkar, and Deval.
Right.
आणि अर्जुन भुवंडा
Okay, I would like to put a question for the neighboring countries first. So, see, back
Can we have the question session after the discussion, please?
Just one word, I would like to, put it so you could just counter this point along with Ritwik's, because we have we're constrained with time. So basically, we know now national elections have been were held at the start of 2020 in the January month. So, and it's been seen that China is using communal and the communist as a source of, stardom in including in Nepal and having a ties with Nepal. We can see the replications right now and on Nepal and its relations with India. So how do you think that Nepal can be an integral part as a neighborhood country in tackling China? You could answer this along with your other arguments too.
Right.
Mallar,
Has everyone joined?
Wait, let me just check. No, I don't think so.
Vedant and Daksh remain. No, Daksh is here.
No,
Daksh is
I
here.
have joined.
The third member from neighboring countries, I think Ankit has not joined yet.
yeah, West Asian and East Asian countries are here.
Sarvesh, you are talking right now, right?
Yes. May I?
Okay,
As
after.
Ankit said-
Okay. After you, I will continue.
Right.
Actually, it's one of your members who's not joined yet. So we'll
If
just wait
the
for a few
neighboring
more
countries
seconds.
are okay, we can start it.
We'll just wait for a few more seconds. And then if he doesn't join, then we'll begin. Okay, yeah, he's joined. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sarvesh, you may
Sarvesh,
begin.
sir, start, please.
Right, thank you. So Ritvik mentioned why these neighboring countries will go against China. Yes, they will not. But at the same time, we must not hamper our relations with them. We must not make our neighboring countries our enemies or have their mindsets against us. Now, China, all these neighboring countries, almost 99% of them, as they will give the statistics, are under Chinese pressure. At the same time, Ritvik gave very nice facts of how our military, our neighbors are not very good when it comes to military, and how the Eastern countries are good to when it comes to the military. Now, we do not need military ties with countries to counter China and Pakistan at the same time. These statements are given by our chiefs. Our ex-naval chief, Admiral Sunil Lanba, he said that even though China has more of equipment when it comes to Navy, our technology is one of the best, and there is no doubt when it comes to naval attacks, we will be hampering China, no doubt. Same goes for our Indian Air Force chief. He said that India is ready to face Pakistan and China at the same time, considering Indian Air Force capabilities as of now. Other than that, I mentioned how Chinese are pressuring the neighboring countries. Here, China is pressuring Pakistan when it comes to construction, Sri Lanka when it comes to construction. 90% of southern Sri Lankan construction is done by the Chinese. All the construction workers are there. They are not giving the Pakistanis and the Sri Lankan people the choice to work in their own construction. All the construction workers there are almost all of them are Chinese. Other than that, why Bangladesh is choosing China to bond with China over India, and why Bangladesh will not go against China is because China is giving them duty-free access to 97% of Bangladeshi products. They're giving $64 billion fund for infrastructure, and also they've mentioned that once the Chinese come up with the COVID-19 vaccine, Dhaka will be their first priority. Now, considering this, of course, they'll not go against China. So why India comes in a role play? Other than that, Nepal also. Under Chinese pressure, Nepalis are sending the Tibetan refugees back to their country, even though they know that they'll be prosecuted. Other than that, as I mentioned, that Mandarin language has been forcefully put into Nepali schools. Nepalis have a policy that no language can be taught and it cannot be made compulsory for the students. And the language is to be taught after school hours. Due to Chinese pressure, they are doing it, not following all these rules. Now, talking about the question which Anay raised, how our ties with Nepal can be improved. As I mentioned, we need to have better ties with these neighboring countries. We need to be more reliable. PM Oli of Nepal, he is in good relations with President Xi Jinping. And we need to take more efforts and ensure that we need to be more accountable. We need to invest more in the countries without expecting them to invest in us. Other than that, when it comes to defense, again, the string of pearls strategy which Chinese are using, they're building ports in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they already have a port. Now Pakistan, they're having a port. Iran, around those, now they're constructing all the string of pearls areas. Despite that, our Indian military officers are saying that we're capable enough. So we do not need to focus on military itself. Now, I'd like to conclude by saying that even if we want to improve ties with Eastern and Western countries, that is okay. But it will not come at a cost of hampering our ties with neighboring countries. We cannot exclude the fact that Chinese are pressuring all the neighboring countries. They're setting anti-Indian mindsets in them. So ignoring this fact and then focusing on Eastern and Western countries, I don't think that's a very good bet for India. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarvesh. Omkar, please keep it short and crisp.
Okay, so going with the Sarvesh point, Rutvik is talking only about military aspect, military posturing, muscle flexing. I would like to say that national security is a collective concept of economic, political, diplomatic, military, cultural. So countering the West Asia point said by Devil, China Iran is doing biggest shipbuilding exercises in Arabian Sea. Recently, 25 years Iran China Accord, that is a nuke tie, has been signed, and this shows that Iran is leaning more towards China. Security conditions in West Asia are deteriorating after the Arab Spring of 2010. Along with this, I would like to say that considering this aggression, India should bolster ties with neighboring countries, which will help in countering China from position of strength. Thank you.
Okay, so Deval, you are next, and after that we will have the last argument from West Asia. Krishna.
Now, I've planned to keep it regional and short and crisp, so please bear with me. First, I'll come from West Asia part. West Asia first, Krishna said Middle East has the highest fossil fuel records. 83% of the fossil fuel from the Middle East goes to USA, China, and India. When if you decrease India from the solution, how will the Middle East perform with the price ratio? The exports will be down. Hence, Middle East can't afford to take us out from the oil refineries issue. That is the economic sense, and nobody can tamper that. Secondly, for the poles of port that China has recognized, out of 12, 7 ports are in our Middle East. That means Middle East has a wonderful relationship with China. And coming to the collective point, how can you go for a friend's friend to be a neutral and then come in state of war? You have to come as a friend's enemy. That is East Asia. China is at war with East Asia, so it's our first duty to bolster ties with East Asia. Nobody is asking us to make a weak tie with neighboring countries, weak tie with the West countries. Keep the ties as it is. Don't reduce it, don't increase it, but bolster the ties with East. That is the debate we are talking about. Nobody is talking about harming the ties with other countries. Second point, I come to the neighboring countries. Neighboring countries, I'll counter Sarvesh. NRC can't be the point of debate because it is the internal matter of India, and no other country can come between the political sense of it. You can't use India's problems as saying that the global stage of neighbors, we are pushing them away. It is our internal matters. First of all, you never can't include NRC in the debate in that way. Third point, now tell me cooperation. I guess Vedant put the point of cooperation. Cooperation, then please tell me which of the countries in Asia supported China with Aksai Chin. Can you please tell the names? Because I have the names with me right now. It is, just a sec. Okay. Yeah, it is Saudi, Jordan, Yemen, Oman, UAE, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Myanmar. These are the nations who supported China in Aksai Chin and Galwan attack. So which cooperation are you expecting from Chinese nations like these? Yet it is a two-sided review. While national security law was passed by China on Hong Kong, India was the first one to support. When Aksai Chin was attacked by China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Laos, and Philippines were the first ones to raise their voice in UNSC and HRC. Which of the countries are blaming India for Indian occupied Kashmir or Pakistan occupied Kashmir? I'm saying in a political language because this is a political network. Saudi blamed India with Pakistan. For Kashmir issue, Saudi, Yemen, Oman, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, Israel, Palestine, even them, they are against the UNHRC in Kashmir. It's when it's our internal issue. These countries are so biased to China and chameleons that they can change their colors anyhow at any point when it comes to such issues. Then how are you expecting in another next 2 or 3 years we can bolster ties with neighboring countries and West Asian countries when in past 50 years we have a policy of neighbor first policy. 1968 neighbor first policy was launched. What happened about that? It's been 50 years we are bolstering ties with them, but it is based. So it is now a collective time when such hard situation comes, East is the best option. Because with East, we have a better cooperation rate because these are economically sound, military sound, and more stable countries. And these countries are coming to us for help. They are asking us for help. I will give you, I have a standard ratio, Japan plus, Korean plus, Korean plus, then Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei. These have since 2017 banned China from economic trade. Korea has completely boycotted China and Chinese product in their country. When such countries are
help giving an FDI inflows, how can we say that we can't bolster ties with them? They are the best ratio. The iron is so hot that we need to hammer it down as quick as possible. And the last point of retrospect I wanted to keep, retrospective to keep was economical issue, because I'm totally talking on economical issues. Please, I didn't have a single factual answer on how East Asian countries are bad in reference to our bolstering ties. Secondly, the depth trap. One of any members, please explain me the depth trap ratio, because nobody has countered that point. Everybody are neglecting that depth trap is a major issue when it comes to bolstering ties. So how will China help us? And how strategically Southeast Asia and Asia are the best option we have to bolstering ties with
you,
new
Devil.
look policy. That's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Devil. We will have the last argument from West Asia, and then we will conclude the debate. So, West Asia, who would like to speak?
I think Manoj will continue from our side.
Yes, Manoj. Manoj, you're on mute.
Unmute your mic, Manoj.
Hello, was I unmuted?
No,
yeah.
You're not unmuted. You're not mute.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear
you.
you.
No, you were completely audible.
Yeah, thank you. Countering.
I'm not able to hear you guys.
Hello, Devil. I'm audible.
Can you hear us?
Yes, Manoj, please go on.
Yeah, now countering on Deval's point, I would like to say that talking that it is completely waste. It is not making sense. So as India is the home of India is the home to world's third largest Muslim population. India has shared its diplomatic ties with West Asian countries in many contexts. Now India has now shed its diplomatic approach in context of Pakistan. So it is also clearly indicated that now India's approach towards Gulf is pragmatically independent of that is of Pak. So it is clear from that this has created an opening for strategic diplomatic ties between the two sides. As UAE has had called India into the 90s OIC, which is OIC by as guest of honor. So I would like Krishna to take over from here. Krishna, will you please?
Deval, I would like to counter your points regarding the support of GCC countries on the Aksai Chin issue. As you yourself said that these countries are like chameleon, they change their policies regarding everything, each and every issue. So I would like to counter you on that point only, that there are aspects where these countries also support us, and I would like to see everyone regarding the economic side of this. But I think oil and natural resources are the most important thing which China is going to need it for its complete dominance in the region. And I think that is the main concluding point from us, that China is trying to gain more and more access to replenish its resources. And I think Middle East has the only playground where we can counter China economically, where it hurts the most to the Chinese Communist policy. That's it from my side.
Thank you.
Just small point from me.
Actually,
a small point from me.
I want to make it very quick, and that will be the last argument.
Yeah. Right. I want to tell you that our Prime Minister Narendra Modi have been bestowed with high awards by the Gulf countries. It is especially to the members talking about that GCC countries are against India. The first honor was given in 2016 by the Saudi ruler. He gave the highest award, the King Abdullah Shah. The second award was given by the UAE with the highest civilian award, which is known as the Order of Zayed. And the third award was given by the Bahrain's highest civilian award, which is the King of Hamad Award. I think that these awards are not given by the Gulf countries to any of the neighboring countries and also the Eastern countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Last
Thank
point,
you. So,
last point, just the last point. A reply to.
Okay, fine.
Right,
Rutvik, last point, then the debate is over. No more points will be taken.
Right. You mentioned about awards and also you mentioned about UAE. I would like to say I have visited UAE and none of the telecommunication works in Dubai except the Huawei. Huawei is the Chinese one, and China's presence in Dubai is most commercial, and they have free visa agreements. Also, they about the recent dispute of Uyghur Muslims in China. So these population of Uyghur Muslims have been hurt severely in China, and UAE has backed them on this issue. UAE said that it is a correct decision from your side to be doing that, whereas countries like Indonesia have been revolting against it. Indonesia, Malaysia, which gives East Asia an edge over those countries, because we would definitely prefer the enemy of an enemy. And Vedant mentioned that these countries are not with not with India, but we never said that those are not with India, but we just claim to say that those are with China. Thank you.
Thank you, Rutvik. So with that, I would like to conclude the debate. I believe all participants did very well, and I would now like to hand all of you over to our judge, Mr. Saurabh, and we would like to hear your insights on the debate, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It was a wonderful debate and really well done to everyone. All of you have really put forward some good constructive points, and few points made were really exceptional and remarkable. I'm really convinced by a few points that all of us made. When you think about Asia as a continent, it's really big in comparison to all the other continents on the planet. So having a big collaboration like having a European Union or having some collaboration through an international organization is really tough, because there are so many major powers in this continent, and it becomes really difficult to form a collaboration. On the side, China has disputes with 18 countries at the same time, and it's a big issue. It really reminds me of World War II, with its Hitler's Spanish dreams of expanding, and he had open fronts on all the ends. So, given that, we also know our history with China. China has breached our trust multiple times, and it is about time that we start thinking about the policies to tackle the issues that China is creating for us. And it is very important that we have good foreign policies, especially to counter such threats. Recently, India has given direct open support to Hong Kong at the Human Rights Council, and we have never seen something like this happen, because India has always been on a defensive end. And going back in history, India is one of the countries who has really helped China to gain recognition in 1949. Not just that, even at the UN Security Council, India had given open support to China. India said at that time, during the formation, that we would want China to become a permanent member of the Security Council, which is a really big thing. And after that, even after having support from America on becoming a permanent member, we saw that India gave open support to China. So this reminds me of the breach of trust that China has done multiple times with us. So it was about time that we start thinking about ways to tackle these threats. I'm really convinced with the few points that all of you made. So if you don't mind, I can just give a quick overview on my view on what probably we have discussed and what we probably can do. So how I see is in the east, the South China Sea, which is a one of the major threat for us, because if we want to cut down the threat from this area, I think if we hit the financial end or the economy of China, I think that would be one of the most beneficial things for us. We've got good relation with the Asian countries, ASEAN, and Japan, Malaysia, Vietnam, Taiwan, Singapore. These countries have given us open support and to support India if anything happens with China. Also, it would disrupt their trade route, and I think this will be very beneficial. You also saw America coming in the South China Sea, and that was the day after Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji went to Ladakh. So I think that also shows us our collaboration with the major powers in the country, or how India is collaborating or has backup of powerful countries. That includes Russia, America, Japan, even Australia. So I think the eastern side, it's really important that we collaborate with these countries. Looking at the western side of Asia, One Belt Road Initiative is one of their key core interests. And I think it is very important for us to some extent, have good connections or good relations with the countries through which this road is going through. Because if this One Belt Road Initiative becomes successful, then it will definitely be a big threat for India. Because through this trade, the economy of China will increase, and with their economy increasing, their power and their military might will increase, because they'll be spending more on their military. So we definitely must control or have good relations with the countries in that region. Also, the western side of Asia is definitely very complicated, because there is, you can see a lot of Islamic cooperation on the western side of Asia, and currently there are conflicts going on. So having good relations with the western countries of Western Asia is challenging, but also equally important, because most of our oil comes from these countries, and we also share good relation, I think, which we should continue to. But when it comes to China, I don't feel that we can really do much harm to China when it comes to the Middle Eastern countries. Going to the neighboring countries of India, I think strategically and geographically, it is very important that we share good relations with these countries. In terms of security, especially because we see that China is investing heavily in Sri Lanka. China is investing heavily, already invested a lot in Pakistan. So these are immediate neighbors, and we cannot neglect these countries. So I think it is very important strategically to share good relations with these countries and continue sharing them, and maybe also focus more on improving our ties with them, especially with the SAARC countries. So all in all, I think you guys shared really good points. And Mala, should I conclude? Should I announce? Please?
Yes, please, sir.
Right. So it was a very close and a tough competition, and I really like all of your points. Very well done to all of you. I am personally convinced with the East Asia team. I think they put very great points. And West Asia and neighboring countries were very close. We're very close to each other when it comes to rubrics. And well done to East Asia team. Congratulations.
Sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Please continue.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the next is the individual award, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mala, please remind me if I'm missing anything. Please let me know.
Sorry,
so the next for the individual award, I think all of you spoke really well, and I would like to mention two names that spoke exceptionally well. They're very close to each other. First one would be Rutvik Ambekar, and the second is Deval Kulkarni. So both of you spoke really well, and both of you are from East Asia team.
Thank you so much.
So very close competition, but the winner I would choose Rutvik Ambekar. And very well done. Congratulations, Rutvik.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, guys. I hope that we continue to have great discussions like this, and I think it's very important to keep such debates ongoing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. It was an honor having you today on this forum. We hope that you keep coming and giving your insights and your advice. It was really helpful. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to all. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
So with that, I would like to conclude today's debate. Congratulations to the winners, East Asia, Rutvik and Deval. And also all the participants did very well. And with that, I would like to conclude. Thank you. And we'll meet next time.
Mallar, just before you end, for the next week, who will be organizing the debate in the next week?
Oh, yes.
Would you like to volunteer?
I would like to volunteer too.
Okay, Deval and who else?
Rutvik.
No, no, not again. Who would like to do it? Vedant?
Okay, I will do it. No problem.
Arey, problem nahi.
No, I will initiate. No problem. I will do with